Um, CoIL is a form of virtual exchange. That's a term that you might have heard, and virtual exchange is the term of art in Europe, especially. I don't love that term because virtual it implies that it's not a real thing that's happening. It is happening online, but real relationships are forged through CoIL. Real knowledge sharing, real knowledge creation. And over again, we see real transformation of perspectives. And as Pete said, yes, for students, but also for faculty. And in many ways, I think that CoIL is more transformational for our faculty. Sometimes I see Niurca nodding her head. Exchange is also an experience, a word that has connotations with mobility. And many times people think, okay, let's do CoIL as a substitute for mobility because we can't connect people through travel. Let's do it online. But really, study abroad is the best way to do it. Our position is that CoIL is not a substitute for anything. CoIL is its own thing. It has some similarities and some differences from mobility exchanges, and it can be coupled with mobility and physical exchange. But it is its own thing, and it's not a substitute for anything. And it's something we're going to do now and into the future, even when we can travel, and hopefully we can send more students abroad than ever before in the future. But it is its own thing, and that's why we have an office for it at FIU. But there's a deeper meaning for why we do it. And that's the term global learning that we were talking about before. So I just want to clarify that, because I think by digging deep into what is global learning and why we do CoIL at FIU, you'll get a deeper sense of the fact that CoIL is its own thing. So I like to start off with why we have global learning with the ancient Indian story from the subcontinent about the blind people and the elephant. So we're surrounded by elephants all the time, whether they are elephants that are local elephants or global, international, regional, global elephants, whether they're elephants that we encounter at an atomic, subatomic scale or at the planetary or interplanetary scale. We're surrounded by elephants. And elephants are problems, questions, tasks that are too big, too complex for any one person, any one discipline, any one institution or cultural perspective to understand, much less solve or address by themselves. Each of us is like a blind person. Each of us, if we're touching a part of the elephant, we touch a part of the elephant, we can perceive, we're experts on that part of the elephant, but we know nothing about the other parts of the elephant. And it's only by connecting our different expertise, our different ways of perceiving the world, that we can have a holistic understanding of the elephant. And that's what the process of global learning is. So it's a process that it's not what we learn, it's not where we learn, it's how we learn together, where we are cultivating diversity in the classroom that is enrolled, the students that are enrolled in our class. It can happen online, it can happen in the community, it can happen abroad. We're cultivating diverse perspectives. We're bringing them together into a collaborative space. We're connecting the blind people's perspectives on the elephant to analyze and address these complex problems that transcend borders of difference. CoIL is a form of global learning. That's what it is. And in its essence, okay, I'm going to get like straight to what is it? You got to have 2 or more teachers working with 2 or more cohorts of students. They can be enrolled in formal classes, or they can be doing this as an elective experience. Okay, that happens sometimes on different sides. You might have students that are enrolled in a class on one side, and on another side, students are doing the CoIL as an elective experience, something that they do for a certificate or an internship or something. 2 or more institutions those institutions are generally internationally based, but the I in CoIL can be interstate, intercultural, interdisciplinary. Two or more cultures are usually at play. And it says one or more disciplines, okay? CoIL does not have to be biology students and biology students working together. You could have biology students and artists working together. In fact, the most interesting ones, I think, are interdisciplinary. We have some examples of that. And one or more languages can be at play, including visual languages, oral languages. We have a CoIL right now with 4 languages being spoken. So it's the more diversity, the better, as it applies to help us understand the elephant. And we bring these together into one module, usually one component of a course that lasts about 4 to 6 weeks, where we have shared goals and shared questions, usually shared questions about the world, why, how, shared tasks that we complete together. And we'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. And the CoIL is co-facilitated by the teachers. I don't like to say team taught, because that implies that we're going to be lecturing to each other's students. That doesn't have to happen at all in a CoIL. But we facilitate it together. And collaboration. And that starts with the teachers, okay? It starts with the teachers. Never, I have this cool idea, I've got to find someone to do it with me, but I want to CoIL, let's co-create something together. It starts there, and that equal power and co-creative relationship extends to students as well. We know there are borders. Language borders, time zone borders. I'm coming to you right now from Iceland. Okay, so we could do this. We got technology. We're going to include synchronous experiences. We're going to have asynchronous experiences. We've had CoILs, Venezuela, Ecuador, Miami use WhatsApp the whole time. Existing or new courses, usually existing. Really important. Disciplinary outcomes, yes, and intercultural outcomes, but they're not separate. We really integrate those. The culture facilitates the disciplinary learning. 4 to 8 weeks, any discipline, any level, and they don't have to be the same. You can have undergraduates and graduates working together. We have a trilateral right now with undergraduate, doctoral students, and postdoctoral students. Anything is possible if you design it well. So the core components of the design, and that is critical. We cannot just jump into this. There are some people like Niurca Márquez who it's like in their blood, right? She was doing CoIL, didn't even know it was called CoIL, and that probably is happening in your institution. But most of the time, and even with people that really know it, like it makes all the sense, some design, backup, coaching, professional development, really important. At the end of the presentation, I'll share with you what we provide at FIU and what we provide to other institutions. 3 components main. One is an icebreaker, creating social presence. And we do these usually at the beginning of the experience to start peeling back the layers of the onion of perspective. And we sometimes do them throughout the CoIL. Collaboration. This is not group work. We can't just put people together in a group and say, go for it. We got to design the collaborative experience. Collaboration does not happen by default. It happens by design. And I think this piece about collaboration and icebreaking especially is the reason why the #1 most common thing that faculty say to us after our professional development is, oh, I can't go back. I can't teach any other way now. Even if I'm not CoILing, I'm going to do this stuff because it's powerful. And then reflection, that's where the learning happens. I got to stop talking. Please share in the chat any thoughts you might have, any questions you might have. We're going to transition into Niurca talking about a real world CoIL experience.
Thank
Ready,
you,
girl?
Stephanie. Yes, I'm ready to go. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm not sure where everyone is at, so hello, everyone. I'm Niurca Márquez, faculty fellow at the Honors College, and also teach at in the Department of Religious Studies. As Pete mentioned, I come from a dance background. I'm a choreographer by training. And so much of this approach, particularly as it refers to collaboration, is something that I've been doing for the last 25 years. And so it was already part of my teaching approach, of my philosophy and the way I design my courses. And again, hadn't realized it was one of those moments of, oh, that's what that's called. Okay, let's go with it. And so in my case, it happens to be the CoIL I'm going to share a little bit about is actually something that came out of an artistic collaboration. I was collaborating with a writer in a global project called Event Horizons, and she happens to teach at the Universidad Tecnológica y Pedagógica de Colombia in Tunja, up in the mountains. And she teaches specifically in her specialties are within literature, anti-oppressive pedagogies and transformational language arts. And so that program is designed to train future English teachers going into the school system in Colombia. My course is entitled Identity, Consciousness, and Performance, Hybridity, Mestizaje, and Transculturation. So we were over on the other end of the spectrum. And I think it's a really good example of how you can traverse disciplinary lines when there are common philosophies and themes. And so what we found was that through the project, we had these shared identities or portions of our identities as artists, as Latinx artists, as queer artists, who were moving into these spaces of what does silencing look like, right, in these different fields. And so we were already addressing the urgency of who is silenced, who is marginalized, how do we centralize the margin, how do we go to stories that are of the margin and for the margin, and how do we make them available? That was when CoIL was presented to me. And so we both sort of looked at each other and went, wait a second, we can do this with our class. Very quickly, within a 2-week period, actually had set up the CoIL, had set up all the tasks, had set up everything we wanted the students to do. Again, because the thinking was already there. The thinking that Stephanie is referring to was already present in what we were exchanging. And so before doing the icebreaker, we actually chose to have them do sort of a prior activity called the identity onion, which is just basically looking at the various layers of their identities, both from the personal, from the lived experience, from a variety of social issues that they're affected by, looking at race, looking at gender, looking at cultural memory, looking at a whole series of a long list of strands in their identity. And so they each did this task individually. Randomly chosen, we put them into groups and then started sort of leading them down these various pathways. But we wanted everything to be generated by them. What was actually coming out, the questioning that was surfacing, the urgencies that were being expressed, we wanted it to come from the students themselves. Juliana Borrero, my partner, has a very strong focus on the idea of the autobiography of the body. A lot of my work centers on the understandings and embodied practices in teaching and in interdisciplinary thought in particular. And so we designed a series of tasks that would take them through these 5 weeks of experiences. And from the identity onion, they had to curate a persona for themselves. They had to decide which social media account they were going to share with their partners. They knew they were going to be sharing information via WhatsApp. We knew we were dealing with some very serious access issues to technology. So we were very careful about that as well. We used things like the Google Jamboards, we used the WhatsApp, we used all sorts and pretty much any piece of technology that was free and accessible that we could get our hands on. And much of the conversation was had with the students themselves. Out of these series of tasks emerged a collaborative style. And so we did give them some insight into various forms of addressing collaboration, and we presented it to them as a collaborative experience from the very beginning. And they made decisions for the group in the kind of conversation that was coming out from the very beginning. And then finally, they themselves decided what what is of most importance to us? Because the big question was, how do we position ourselves? That was kind of the urgency that was given to them by us, the faculty. And then they chose what themes and topics and social issues they wanted to engage with. And so I want to actually really stress this fact that it is co-facilitated. We, after creating the groups, we had 3 groups assigned to each of us, mixed groups. So we had some of our own students plus some of the students in the other university. We gave them a couple of additional readings, not a whole lot outside of what the course already required of them, because again, this CoIL was created mid-semester. So we had to make sure we did not add any more work to those students, above and beyond what was already in the modules. And really what we looked at was we just looked at our existing modules and decided these are the ones that make the most sense for us to enter a conversation and for them to enter into conversation with each other. So it required actually minimal change to the existing coursework. What it required was a redirecting of how we were going to address that material. Then they went on and they all ran with it. We had things as diverse as students proposing complete overhauls of elementary education with very radical pedagogies. We had a group who worked on issues of social violence and domestic violence. They really made a distinction between those two, those that happen on social levels versus those that happen in the private sphere. And we also had a group who did a series of works on, they used Chomsky's black box, and they titled their project Our Iridescent Box, and addressed issues of the non-binary, both in gender, in sexual orientation, and also expanded the conversation into cultural identity. And so it was very, very interesting to hear what these students were saying and how much they were actually pushing the theories we had given them, how much they were challenging them and questioning them in their own address. I'm going to share really quickly my screen with you just to show you one of the projects that came out of it, which I'm currently working on getting some funding for them to see if we can actually launch this. This was a group working on stories of forced migration. And together they came up with their declaration of urgency, why they felt this was important. And they designed a site with the 4 of them initially, looking at issues of migration as it pertained to each of their lived experiences. Our student in Colombia expressed on numerous occasions that she herself had not been someone who had lived through a forced migration. And so we kept directing them to continue to question their surroundings. And she wrote one of the most compelling pieces on the current status of Venezuelan immigrants in Colombia. We had also a student who is Haitian American who said, I can't talk about my parents' migration without speaking first about the Middle Passage. And so there was some really, really interesting work that came out of this. They paired up their stories with quotes from who they felt were the most impactful authors that they had come across in this experience. Some were authors we had given them, some were not. Some were, authors they found on their own and chose on their own. And so there was some really interesting information that came out of it. By the way, this is actually an ongoing project. Some of them have decided to continue working on it. And then they also invited folks to share their stories and add to the content. So I think you can very quickly see the multiple layers of potential in these projects. Additionally, and I think the most interesting piece about this project is that once the project was over, we had finished the semester, everything was done, a considerable amount of unrest erupted in Colombia. And now these students who had been pushed all semester long to question themselves, question their positioning, question, what do they do in the face of adversity? What do they do in the face of oppression? Suddenly had a very real life experience to contend with. Not only the students, but we, the faculty. There was a pretty considerable pushback at Juliana's university against protesting, against any sort of voicing of opinions. And here these students were coming out of this course where they had been asked to do this all along and now had to face some very real repercussions. How they chose to do this was fascinating. The students in Miami decided they were going to be the ones to post their information on their Facebook pages, on their Instagram. And so these ideas about cross-cultural communication, collaboration suddenly became very real tools for activism, artivism, and advocacy. So I think it's just, and I have a lot more information available if anybody has any questions, but I think it's just, I know we're really short on time, so I want to keep it short. And I know, Stephanie, we need to get back to your presentation, but just really quick, this has so many possible layers of learning that we don't even consider in our day-to-day, right? And the learning has continued. The cross-cultural communication has continued well beyond the parameters of the course. It is still ongoing. Some of them are trying to get funding for their projects. Some of them have proposed pieces of their projects to their universities. And I honestly could not be happy. And also for the faculty, Juliana and I are currently working on a piece of writing that we hope will actually make its rounds through not just the traditional scholarship, but also in a couple of websites and platforms, online platforms dedicated to artivism and also within arts and cultural practice. So Stephanie, I will turn it back to you to go ahead and give us the rest of the presentation for today.
You said a lot of really important things, and one of them being the international relations piece. And this is a reason why faculty need support with this, because working with faculty in certain countries, when there's unrest, the faculty member on the other side has issues with freedom. It just goes on and on. So there does need to be support for that, but the ripple effects professionally for students and faculty are far and wide. I could show you some pictures if we have time. I'll show you pictures of a ripple effect for one faculty member of just one, and they may not she put the CoIL on her tenure and promotion file as curriculum innovation, but more powerful is this Fulbright Scholar in Residence that she's applying for, the book proposal that she's writing with her partner in India, the research papers that they've published with their students. I mean, there's just a lot here. So, so a few more examples, okay? Especially some interdisciplinary examples, because this is the piece that for some faculty, it's the hardest to kind of grasp. I don't think that's the same issue in honors, because for many honors colleges, even if you are a more discipline focused honors college, you have that interdisciplinary mindset. These are just a few examples, not only at FIU, but in others. So we think in the CoIL about a certain theme, about a certain question, a certain challenge, and then we seek the right partners to help us learn about other parts of the elephant. Okay. And I would say internationally, where you're going to find the most likely partners right now, there's just a ton of energy in Latin America. We just trained the 24 members of the Learn Chile network and all of their Latin American partners. And Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Peru. I'm tomorrow starting a State Department funded project, CoIL training for Honduran faculty, 900 Honduran faculty and US partners. So if you're looking for North-South partnerships, you're gonna find amazing partnerships there, a lot coming out of there. You'll notice we haven't talked about technology yet. That's because the technology serves the task and we don't use each other's learning management system. We can't often invite others into it. FERPA, GDPR, other privacy issues. But also, once someone is the host and someone is the guest, it throws off the whole power structure. So we're looking for a third space. So we think about what do we want to do? And then what is going to be the tool that we already know how to use, that's easy. We don't have to spend CoIL time learning new tools. So we use the same things that we would use for any other thing in our lives. Plus, if we use things like WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or all kinds of other, students will make relationships and they will remain related and connected in those spaces. This is social capital. So for those of us who are in institutions like ours, a minority serving institution, where social capital is key to social mobility, and these are relationships that are really important for our students. So we want real relationships to develop here. So just a couple last things in terms of what we're up to at FIU and how we could continue to work together and things. I have a 3-minute CoIL explainer video, which you are welcome to take and incorporate and put into your website. If you would like to, you can find it there. It's on YouTube, but it's there, and it has embedded Spanish, French, and Arabic subtitles right now. We have a workshop that is partnered. So Niurca and her partner do the workshop together. It's a co-facilitate, and the workshop is itself a CoIL. So we have the one I did last one I did had for FIU faculty had people coming in from Japan and Ghana and Colombia and Spain. It was Toronto. It's a small world. It's really fun. The faculty have a great time doing it, and it's totally interactive. So there are 4 Zooms, and then there's asynchronous independent reading, and then there's partnered work on the faculty's side, and it's a whole guided thing. We do offer these to other institutions and their international partners on a contracted basis as our schedule and current capacity allows us to do. If you want to hear another story, a really compelling story from the podcast, Michaela, this is women's studies, gender violence and the law is what she teaches. She collaborates with a professor of video game design in Brazil. Enough said, it's very cool. And the last thing is, CoIL is an educational intervention, but it is a transformational intervention. Transformational perspectives and knowledge creation happens in these things. We see it over and over and over and again. So if you're going to go into this world, be prepared because for some faculty, this is all they want to do. And it does require support. And so we have a CoIL Leadership Institute at FIU too, for teams of US and international institutions that come. We just finished our first one online to think about how do we develop the infrastructure to connect with the faculty who are looking for this, to support them, to help them find matches, to get them professionally developed, train and sustain their work, and connect them to all the other internationalized teaching and learning opportunities that are available to our faculty and students. And so that's what we do at CoIL, FIU CoIL.